But I think the game and the gaming experience that really got me into wanting to research video games, right? And research games in general, I guess, was World of Warcraft that I was playing in my 20s. In my early 20s, it came out 2004. I started playing World of Warcraft 2005. And I was honestly quite hooked, right? I would spend a lot of time on that game. And I was really fascinated by it because while I was playing a lot of games as a child, I didn't play that many during sort of my teenager years. So I had a sort of one gaming hiatus during that period, and then I got introduced to World of Warcraft, and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Hey, welcome back to the JYU for You podcast, where you can learn about our international programs and what it's like to be a student in Jyväskylä. Today I'm talking with Maria Ruotsalainen, who is a postdoctoral researcher in game studies and will be teaching in the new Game Studies Master's program. We talked about the program structure, the different backgrounds that are relevant for game studies, and why you should apply. If you're interested, you can learn more about this program in JYU's website, and you can find that link in the description below. Enjoy. Welcome, Maria, to the podcast. How are you feeling?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I'm good. Really excited to be here.
Nice. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Maria Ruotsalainen, and I work as a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Jyväskylä in the Department of Music, Art and Culture. I do game research mainly, game culture research, and I also teach subjects related to game studies.
Amazing. I'm speaking for myself because I wasn't familiar with game studies before, so this is going to be interesting. I learned a lot for this podcast, and I'm still learning. So, and I imagine that a lot of people watching are also learning. So, first of all, I want to know how you got into game studies. What made you go into this like academically? Because a lot of us like to play games, but studying is a different thing.
Thank you. That's a great question. It all sort of like you could argue it already started when I was a child. I was really into playing games, and we had Commodore 64 since I was a little child. And I remember being really fascinated by those games. My favorite game at that was this kind of a Donald Duck game where you had to do these different jobs to get your nephew's toys. And there was this one job you had to organizing toy store, and you had to make sure the toy store is closed when a train passes or all the toys will break. And that was very exciting. It was kind of scary. I remember really enjoying that game, but being really sort of antsy when playing that particular job. So I don't know. So I guess already then I was interested as a child. Of course, I was interested of the game, but then reflecting back on it later on, interested of sort of the emotions they evoke. But I think the game and the gaming experience that really got me into wanting to research video games, right? And research games in general, I guess, was World of Warcraft that I was playing in my 20s. In my early 20s, it came out 2004. I started playing World of Warcraft 2005. And I was honestly quite hooked, right? I would spend a lot of time on that game. And I was really fascinated by it because while I was playing a lot of games as a child, I didn't play that many during sort of my teenager years. So I had a sort of one gaming hiatus during that period, and then I got introduced to World of Warcraft, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, of course, it's like games had changed quite a lot from the Donald Duck game to that. So having this sort of open world and other players and all these things you could do in that game, the interactions, I found it amazing, and I was playing a lot, and I got really intrigued again by this sort of like way people were sort of really pulled into that game, and very motivated by it. And I was doing raiding with my raid group, and you would have these up to 25 people trying to do this task together and, preparing to it together and everyone trying to do their part and, just putting so much effort to this, what is essentially play, and really doing it together as a group effort. So I got really fascinated by that, really. I got really fascinated, like, what happens, like, why were we so enthralled by the game? Like, why was it so important part for so many people's life? Like my life, it was a huge part of my life. So then when I was I did my bachelor's in liberal arts and sciences in Netherlands and Tilburg, so I wasn't really doing game studies then yet, but there was some topics that touched upon games, or if there was an assignment that I could do, something game related, I would do it that way. So I was already then sort of incorporating it to my studies as much as I could. And then when I was choosing my master's degree, I actually came here to Jyväskylä to do it in digital culture, because games are obviously sort of important and part of digital culture. And then I sort of was able to really move to research that topic. Yeah.
Amazing. That's fascinating to me. And my next question is, what exactly is game studies?
Right.
That's a very basic question, but it's important to define it because it can mean so many things. And I just think people will appreciate hearing from you. How would you describe game studies?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. I think game studies might be broader than some people assume. I don't know. I of course don't know what are people's assumption also on game studies. But it's a new field. First of all, it's a quite new research field. It has emerged in past decades. Alongside with the rise of gaming, or like how gaming has become more popular and video games have become more prominent part of our culture. Also, game studies has become more visible and bigger research field. But it's not just video games that we research in game studies. So I think that's something that gets easily overlooked and when we think about game studies. But we do, like, there's a lot of research on analog games, on LARP, on playful activities. So game studies is bigger than just study of a video game. And that's another thing, like, we might think when we think about video game studies, we think about this sort of like, when we think about game studies, we perhaps be thinking of research or study of a particular game artifact, which is part of it. That's a part of it, what game studies does. But it's not just we don't only research game as like a sort of an object or an artifact. We don't only look at that's what can be done, but we also study players and game cultures. And what you see, and then there is sort of like overlap with study of overlap with gamification research. So researching gamified appliances, how elements of game are used in other apps and appliances and processes. So in that sense, the boundaries are quite porous, and it touches upon many different other fields. Gamification as one example, and you can research gamification in game studies, but also sort of things like we are all the time moving between different field of humanities. A lot of people have background, for example, maybe in literature studies, and people, but also from fields like psychology, social sciences, cultural studies. So there's all the time sort of move back and forth between game studies and these fields. And a lot of people have said game studies is rather new field. So maybe there is not that many even that would say that that's their home discipline, but they come from other fields. And also, as a consequence, they bring with them their fields research methods and theoretical approaches, which then can make game studies a very rich field, because it has all these things coming out from other discipline, right? So yeah, it has a huge variety of approaches, methods, theories that are being applied to study of games, players, play, and play cultures. Yeah, so I think that's how I would sort of characterize it, is with through its sort of diversity, both of the what do we study, so not just video games, not just digital games, but also analog games, role playing, playful activities, players themselves, cultures, game cultures, the role of play in society, but also the ways in which these are being researched with the huge variety of different approaches. Yeah.
Amazing. And then drawing from your own research, can you tell us a bit more about your journey?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good question. Right. So I've been researching quite many things. So I guess I'm quite diverse, just like game studies themselves. But I can talk about some of the sort of like more prominent projects that I've done, or more sort of visible, I guess. I did my PhD dissertation on sportification of esports, and I could have actually mentioned esports earlier when we were talking about this sort of boundaries and hybridity of play, because I guess esports is one of those phenomenons. Esports is playing video games competitively, or competitive video games, and what I looked at my PhD dissertation was the way that this activity, playing competitive games or playing video games competitively, has been turned into a sport. So it's been sportified through the way, through its presentation in media, for example, and through some of the ways institutions have been formed. And definitely not all, but there's been also sort of this trend and intention. It has been an intentional process of turning it to a sport, to make it have a sort of make gaming have more mainstream appeal. So I'm looking at all these things in my dissertation in relation to one particular video game, Overwatch, and I'm also very interested of the sort of role of gender in all that. So what happens to sort of what we can call the gender structures of gaming when it turns to an esport, and how does it create sort of inclusive or exclusive structures. I've been also really interested to look at the sort of like role of women and the way women are positioned within these processes, and gender more largely, how gender gets configured and reconfigured within these processes. So I've been also looking at the gender in esports, in esports cultures, also in video games and game cultures. We are also currently working on research on game jams, and we have this particular case we are looking at. And when the game jams were organized in the National Archive of Finland,
Ooh.
and the game jammers were instructed to use historical maps of Finland as their inspiration for the game. And yes, I'm currently involved in a research where we are now looking at how historical knowledge is part of the game making process. So that's a sort of a little bit different kind of topic. And I also did a few year research with a colleague on sort of toxic and negative behavior in video games. So that also had this kind of a very societal aspect of trying to look answers and solutions. So how do we tackle the toxic behavior and video games? And we did that project together with the non-profit project Non-Toxic project, which was a project trying to create and working on creating more sustainable gaming cultures. So that project also had this sort of very practical angle of trying to find solutions, like how do we tackle the salty and toxic behaviors that are sometimes part of video games and playing video games.
That's so fascinating. And I also want to know, what might a research project look like for this master's program in terms of what it can actually look like? Is it more theoretical? Is it more practical? Is it a mix of both?
Right, thank you. So let's think about a little bit like what our students will be studying in this program and sort of what ways they can then take their master thesis too. So the program it's very theoretically oriented. So it's a game studies program, but we also have a practical side to it. So in addition to these more theoretical courses, we do have more hands-on courses as well. We have, for example, a game possible. It's possible for the students, for example, to do a game project where they are working on creating a game.
Nice.
And we have great collaborators for that. So the northernmost Unreal Engine training center is here in Jyväskylä.
Really?
Yeah, in the Digian Game Center, and our students will have an access to that resource as well. So while it's a theoretical course, there is a lot that the students can do also in terms of practice, and if they're really more interested of sort of like mixing research and game development, or really wanting to well, it's not a game design course, it's not a game design course. It offers also these opportunities. We also have a possibility to do an internship, which can be sort of in one of the local game companies, for example, and allows this sort of more practical angle to the studies. But then we of course have a lot of sort of like a theory of games. We have a theory and research of game course. We have course on game cultures, game psychology, game analysis, games and communication, forms of games. So all this also sort of talks about the diversity of this field, right?
Yeah.
So one day you'll be studying like what's the psychological effect of a video game, and the next day you'll be studying in I don't know, communication in MMOs.
Yeah.
So there's a huge variety of things you can sort of situate yourself and choose. And maybe you would be interested to sort of do game analysis. So really analyze the game artifact. Like, what is the game trying to tell me? We have a course for that. So yeah, what I think I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of variety. There's a lot of room to find a way to do game research and situate yourself in that in a way that interests you. And if you're more sort of like interested of outside academia employment after the master's degree, so if you're not interested of, for example, continuing the doctoral studies, there is a lot of opportunities and a lot of things that prepare you for that. For example, the career in industry.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting about this program. It's very diverse in, like you were saying, subjects. It's also very multicultural, like people from all over the place. So I was thinking that I believe people will come together to create like incredible things, incredible research. They're gonna go off to do like great things. It's so exciting, don't you think?
I'm extremely excited. I can't wait to see, because really we as those who are sort of like teaching and supervising and being part of the program, we only bring part of it in, right? The students will bring the rest.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see what the students will bring in and how it will mold, and as you said, it's truly diverse program because it's international, but also because there is no one background you can come from, or there is such a variety of backgrounds we expect our students coming from. It's also sort of reflected in the way that it's a very interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary topic. So our students can come from very great variety of backgrounds, really.
Yeah, that's incredible. Because also in my own program, I was kind of hesitant because I was like, I'm not sure. Like I kind of felt like I had to know everything. But when I came here, then I realized like, no, like it's a broad program, mine as well. But you just get what you need to learn a little bit about everything and see what interests you, and then take that path, or try different things. And throughout the program, you do small research essays and things, so you can like get a feel for what going that route feels like. And yeah, I'm so excited for this program. I wish I was taking it.
It's never too late.
It's never too late. You're right. So yeah, and then another question is, because I know that everybody plays, and in different capacities. People might not even realize that they're playing because gamification is everywhere, like you said. But what would you say for somebody that's kind of, maybe after watching this, thinking, well, I could go into that, or I like games, but do I really want to like study it academically? What would you say for somebody that's considering applying for this program?
Okay, I think there's a few things I would say. First of all, you don't need to be quote unquote hardcore gamer to study video games or study games. Sorry. It's completely okay that's your background. You've played some games and you're interested in some aspects to it. That's great. As I was talking about earlier, it's not just this playing video games, right?
Yeah.
But it's much larger phenomena we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We are talking about how society and societal processes have, for example, been more gamified or ludified. We are talking about different kind of playful practices that take place in many sides of society, including with work life, for example.
Yeah.
We are talking about people playing maybe on their mobile when they're waiting for a bus, and that's what they do. That's still a play activity, and that's sort of still part of their everyday life. So we're talking about huge phenomenon that is not just sort of this what we sometimes think as a sort of what gaming is or what games are, but it's much larger phenomenon. So if you're interested of culture, if you're interested of society, if you're interested of human behavior, if you're interested of education, educational games, that's a big topic. Educational games or gamified approaches to education, or how fun is part of learning. All these are sort of like topics that are related to game studies. So what I'm saying, like, if you're interested of any of these things, then go ahead, apply. I think you'll find yourself positively surprised how well mastering game studies can sort of answer your needs or your interest, because society is games are becoming more and more prominent in society. So they cannot be really overlooked, and they can be looked in relation to so many topics.
Yeah, we've been playing since the beginning of time. We're not gonna stop now.
Right. We think the oldest board game is 6,000 years old, and that might be only because that's the only evidence we have. So playing games and just playing has always been part of human activity, and it's always been part of how our society is formed, and it's always been part of our cultures. It's even part of animal kingdom. So
yeah, that's so interesting.
We really cannot separate it from our lives. So in that sense, it touches upon so many aspects. And doing study on games, doing research on games, it really opens the pathways to understand so many other phenomena. Yeah.
No, it's so fascinating to me, honestly. And yeah, I'm so excited for this program, and I hope I can even take some electives because my education is in my degree is in education, and that interests me a lot, that field. So yeah, there's multiple uses to this degree, like you were saying. So then, why should people come here specifically to Finland, to JYU, to study game studies?
because Finland has top-notch game research and top-notch game development. So we really do have the best of the both worlds here. Finnish game research is at the top percentile of the world, and we have a very vibrant research scene, and great research is being done here. Same is true with the Finnish video game industry, which includes companies such as Supercell and Rovio, and a lot of excellent companies here in Jyväskylä. So really, as I said, it's the best of the both worlds. If you come to Finland, you have an excellent research scene and excellent game development scene. In addition, here at University of Jyväskylä, we have great infrastructures for students. We have our own gaming lab that will be at students' use to play games, research games, do testing, do whatever you can imagine. Jyväskylä is also a great place to live. It's clean, it's safe, everything is close by. So I don't know. There is a lot of pluses here.
Well, we hope to see you here. Thank you so much, Maria, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. And don't forget to check out the description box where you find all the links of everything that was mentioned in this episode and more information about the Game Studies program at JYU. Thank you.